I was introduced to him by Dominic. Dominic knew the Varios, the whole family. There was a whole group of Paulies and Peters and all kinds of Varios. And
Yeah.
occasionally we would stop in Brooklyn at Paulie Vario's cab stand. That's what they had. And his brother Babe, I met his brother Babe. So the whole Vario crew was, a big Italian family, and everybody, worked in and around Paul Vario. And that's how I got to meet Vario. And then in '71, when we opened up Sinatra Club, it wasn't long that Jimmy came there, probably around Christmas time, I think. And that's how I got to meet him when he came into the Sinatra Club. But by that time, Cataldo had already taken me to Jimmy's place on Lefferts Boulevard. He had this Robert's Lounge.
Yeah.
It was a bar, and in the basement they had like a card room where they played cards, which Scorsese showed in the movie.
Yeah.
For me, I always thought that the Jimmy Burke character was subdued. I thought Jimmy Burke was bigger than life guy. He was full of energy. He was smart. He was street smart, and he knew every scam you could possibly be involved in illegally in and around the mob. But that's the Jimmy Burke that I met around Christmas '71. He came to our little Sinatra Club.
Okay. And, even an early Jimmy Burke, he was known to be not a serial killer in the beginning, but he was doing killings. And even like a personal one that he had done was for himself that, he had met his wife, and her ex-boyfriend wasn't leaving her alone about some situation. And what is, documented from what I read was that he had chainsawed her ex the day after they had gotten married and got rid of the body. And, that was kind of it after that. Then just straight after the wedding, he was already doing some shady stuff. So I don't know if you ever heard that throughout time.
No, I never heard those early stories.
Yeah.
Like I said, the Jimmy I met was a heck of a gambler. He was a wheeler and a dealer. He always had stolen merchandise, which we call swag. And he had a group of guys who followed him. They really followed him around like he was the Pied Piper. And everybody knew about his reputation through Paulie Vario. So he was, again, protected by a mob guy, Vario.
Yeah, and even when he was getting involved with Vario and stuff, he was doing, hijackings. That was one of his big things. And, one thing that I wrote down, I believe this is what they say that he got his name was that, Jimmy the Gent, was that he would take these, the driver's wallets, and then he would put in some money in there, $50, whatever, and then look at their license and say, hey, you know what? I got your address. I know exactly who you are. Don't say it was us. Have a good day, or something like that,
Yeah.
So they called him Jimmy the Gent. That's one way, and that's kind of creative. But besides that, was he actually a gentleman to you? Was he?
He was always, he was always pretty proper. He was respectful in every way. He wasn't just respectful to mob guys. He was respectful to everybody. That's how he conducted his life. Yeah. So whatever he did behind closed doors, I wasn't privileged to know, because I didn't get involved with him in crime until maybe mid 1972.
Yeah. He would recruit one of your crime partners, Tommy DeSimone, and his crew, along with Henry Hill as well. So he was definitely a big factor in you and Tommy doing business, because he was able to, flip the merchandise, get rid of it wherever you need, store it and all that. But and on top of that, he brought in your crime partner, Tommy DeSimone. So that's kind of what he did.
Yeah. From what I remember, when you first meet somebody, sometimes you'll meet people in a life. Like it happened in and around the mob 20, 30 years later in Hollywood. I met somebody, and then a couple of years later, I go, who introduced me? I forgot who introduced me to such and such a person. Mm-hmm. So I didn't know a lot about Tommy. And I think Dominic knew a little bit more about Tommy through Paulie Vario and Jimmy. And then he just said to me, "Don't worry, he's okay. Let's see if you can get together with him," because, he was coming in the Sinatra Club. Paulie was coming in the Sinatra Club. And Paulie had a whole following of guys. I'm sorry, not Paulie, Jimmy. Jimmy had a whole following of guys out there at his place, Robert's Lounge, they called it, which was only a mile or two from the cargo area in JFK. I mean, they were very close to the airport there.
Well, and a funny story as well is when I read and researched was that Henry Hill and Tommy DeSimone, they had done that heist, the one where they had walked out with all that money, and they didn't even have to pull a gun or anything at anyone. So they just walked in there and they were able to take the money and go. But from what I did find out as well is that they had a woman go and they had her meet up with like this head security guy because he wouldn't take a bribe or nothing. So they found out he liked women, of course. So then they got a prostitute, had him go in like a steam bath with her or something like that. And I believe Henry went in there and made the keys, made a copy of them, brought them back. And then that's how they were able to walk into the airport heist and take the money out. But they kicked up money to Jimmy Burke. That's what I'm getting at. And that you brought up Robert's Lounge, and I believe this is the time around the time that he had bought Robert's Lounge with that money that he had gotten from that heist.
Well, one of the things I don't think that anybody really wrote about Jimmy was he was a master at convincing truck drivers, people in positions to give information, and he was a master at what we call give-ups.
What's that?
A give-up is when a truck driver decides to give up his truck. Instead of really getting heist, they make believe they were heisted, and this followed a lot of mob activities. Like years ago, I'll talk about like a diamond robbery heist that I was involved in. It was a give up. It was a plan. So Jimmy was a master at that. Many of those truck drivers just gave him the truck. Then they had to create a story. Oh yeah, I was hijacked by 3 black guys. I was hijacked by 3 Hispanic guys. When in fact they weren't even hijacked by the Italian guys. They just gave information to Jimmy. He took the truck, took those guys for a ride, gave them some hot dogs and a $50 bill, and then they went and reported a bogus report on the heist. So Jimmy was a master at that too. People didn't really mention that.
Hey, thanks for watching this clip. This clip came from one of my interviews I did in the past. Please hit subscribe if you want to get more clips like this. Also, if you want to watch the full interview, I'll put a link in the description. Or you can hit the button on the screen to watch the full